Praised be Jesus and Mary. Just a word or two about today's saint, Hyacinth Mariscotti, a Franciscan, who was born in 1585, and at a young age, she seemingly gave up the noble way of life, which was possible for her because she came from a noble family. She seemingly gave it up to enter a Franciscan monastery. But that was only seemingly, only in appearance, because though she became a nun, and a Franciscan nun, vowed to mortification, she continued to lead a very comfortable life, even in the monastery. Because of the means which she had at her disposal, she surrounded herself with comforts, and actually gave great scandal to her fellow sisters, because she lived quite the opposite of what the ideal was, which she vowed. And for many years she persevered in this type of life. Profound relaxation and in observance of the religious calling which she had received. It took a serious illness to wake her up. And in the course of this illness she had to receive Holy Communion as viaticum. And the priest confessor who brought it to her was scandalized at exactly how she lived. Her cell was far from the poor cell of a Franciscan nun. Scandalized at this, he reproached her and advised her to live more humbly. And she took the correction. Grace touched her heart. She realized that she deserved that reproach. She took the correction, gave up these comforts to which she clung, not only to which she clung, but which she shouldn't have had in the monastery anyway, and embraced a life of penance and profound penance. Developed a deep devotion to Christ's sufferings, which she imitated, became an example to the sisters with which she lived, and died a holy death, being canonized later on in 1807. Died in 1640, canonized in 1807. So we see how it took correction for Saint Hyacinth to convert, to embrace a life of holiness, of a pursuit of religious sanctity. And she had a lot to thank for. She had her confessor to thank for this, who had the courage to reproach her, to challenge her, and to tell her exactly what he thought of her relaxation. He performed his duty as a shepherd. It took his courage. And courage is the right word, because a lot of times when we're maybe faced with the challenge of fraternal correction, again, it probably doesn't happen often that we're actually in a situation where we have to correct, but sometimes it does. Our tolerance is very often just a code word for our cowardice. We say we're tolerant of the lives of others. We're called to love them, not to correct them. We're called to be tolerant, which is in the end nothing else but just our own cowardice. It's a concern not for the other person, but rather for ourselves. We don't want to be hurt in the process of correcting somebody else. But fraternal correction is nonetheless necessary. It's actually an act of both humility and charity towards others, and it's especially necessary if it's friends or loved ones that need correction, whether it's because they've strayed off the right path that leads to salvation altogether, or because maybe they're far from the ideal of holiness of which they're capable with the help of God's grace. For this reason, close friends are all the more bound to correct each other with charity, with patience, with humility. But precisely for the fact that they're friends, they're bound to correct each other, to exhort each other to salvation and to sanctification. And so are those who are bound by duties towards each other, so parents towards children, spouses towards each other, husband to wife, wife to husband, fellow religious amongst themselves, as did the confessor when he admonished Hyacinth. Always with charity, with humility, with patience, and realizing that the most effective, indispensable, and effective means of correcting, or rather the condition for any effective correction, is always that of being an example for the person that we're correcting, be an example for them of the virtue that we want them to practice. So the confessor that corrected Hyacinth was himself certainly a man who lived a penitential life, a life of poverty, penance, mortification. And we too, we have to realize that when we're called to correct friends, close relatives, people we love, people we're concerned about, we have to first and foremost give them an example of the life that we want them to practice. And then have the courage and the humility and the charity to voice our concern for them, for their salvation and for their sanctification. Praised be Jesus and Mary.